Hello, I'm Dr. Pierre Samaan, and it's wonderful being back with you as we talk about things that are going to help you, help me. When I talk about these things, it helps me as well. I learn from every client. I grow every day. We're all supposed to grow every day, learning from one another as we help one another. We're talking about sexual addiction, part 4 in this episode. I hope you have gained some understanding, perhaps refreshed some things you've already learned about it in the series that we have already been working on. Today, we're talking about core beliefs of the sexual addict. And of course, we're doing this because we're for healing, peace, and harmony. We want to give every client that healing, that inner peace, that inner sense of tearing down those hurts and pains, those strongholds of the past, so that we can have greater harmony in the present day. And that includes relationship with relationships and the work that we do, the tasks that we perform every day. We perform them so much better when we have that inner peace and healing. In talking about the core beliefs of the sexual addict, I'm drawing from the work of Patrick Carnes, which is the foremost researcher in sexual addiction. And he's written several books that have been classic in this field. This one called Out of the Shadows is a very important book, and I used to be an instructor for addictions in Florida for those working on certification as addictions professionals, and I often would refer back to this particular book in the course of sexual relations and addictions. Listen, sex is not meant to be bad. Sex is a good thing. It helps bond relationship, the marital relationship between a man and a woman. But when you take it out of norm, you exaggerate it, and you take it out of marriage, problems occur. And we're talking about some of those problems. Obviously, you can do what you want. But when you do things that cause problems for yourself and or for others, then you need to pay attention. What's going on here? Why am I continuing to have these problems of difficulties with relationships or difficulties with how I see myself or other difficulties or legal problems and medical problems? Well, pay attention. Something's wrong. Something needs changing. And in sexual addiction, we have spoken in the previous episodes how it's an out-of-control behavior. It's out of control, and the person involved in it, whether you want to call them a sexual addict or a sexual abuser or a sexual compulsive behavior, it's out of control. And so since it's out of control, they're unable to stop their behavior, their sexual behavior, despite the self-destructiveness that comes out of it. And that can be devastating, especially for some. I recall many years ago, I had several offices, and one office was in a clinic where they allowed me to talk about spiritual things, counsel in a spiritual way, Christian counseling way of model of counseling. And I had a couple, young couple, they weren't that old, in their late 30s, I would say. And it was unfortunate because one of the physicians had referred them to me and asked me to please talk to them and help them in whatever way, because there was no hope for the wife. And unfortunately, early in their marriage, even before their child. He had solicited sex from prostitutes, caught the HIV virus. At that time, many years ago, it was brand new. There was no treatments for it, and passed it on to his lovely wife. It went so quickly in her, turned into AIDS, and it was very difficult having to know that this person has been given a death sentence, and she had a child, and that young son was going to lose his mom and eventually lose his dad. And eventually the wife did pass away, and the husband who contracted it first, his immune system was stronger apparently, and he lasted longer, but eventually he passed away as well during that time period. It's an out-of-control behavior that puts the sex addict in situations that can be devastating, can be harmful to the sex addict, and then harmful to those he's in relationship with. And previously we've also spoken about the 4 cycles or phases of sex addiction and the 3 levels of sex addiction behavior. So I hope you, if you're interested in that and you didn't see those previous episodes, please go back to them and you can get the information in detail. Today we're talking about the core beliefs that are within the sex addict. And I guess to understand the core beliefs, we need to understand what are core beliefs. What does that mean? Core beliefs are basically the beliefs that we begin with early in life. It may be as a little child, we heard dad or mom say certain things over and over again, and we received them. We took them in and made them a belief of our own. Teenage life, you hear from peers, you hear from authority figures such as teachers, and you adapt, you accept a core belief that goes deep. It's not just superficial, it goes deeper inside. So deep, in fact, that core belief becomes part of your identity. It's ingrained in such a way that if threatened in some way, it's threatening who you are, what you believe in, the whole of who you are. And that causes an overreaction or an overcompensation in protecting that core belief. And so we see various things happening. So the essential parts of how we see ourselves, how we see the world, how we see other people, how we even read into the future, think about the future, that all gets wrapped up into those core beliefs. And core beliefs are uncompromising. It's something that is not given up easily, and it's not watered down easily. They're strengthened by focusing on supporting information that ignores the truth. Yes, there are truthful core beliefs, but most of the core beliefs, especially the ones we're talking about, are core beliefs that are faulty. Maybe they were true at one time. Maybe you were told you were fat and ugly or stupid, and you accepted that and you took it in as an identity. But suddenly you're an adult and you've blossomed. You've gotten taller, you're no longer overweight, or you've learned more, you experience more, you're smarter at that point. It's no longer true, but you're still believing that core belief, that faulty core belief, to be true. And it's hard to get through that. And so you act on what you believe to be true, even though it's not. And you overcompensate to feel better. Core beliefs, as I mentioned earlier, generally come from parents, family members, and authority figures, teachers, movie stars, movies you watch. If you have a favorite movie star and there's a certain theme in the way this movie star produces his films and so on, you may accept that core belief without realizing it. And suddenly you have developed a faulty core belief if it's not a good one, if it's not a right one, if it's not true. You have accepted this faulty core belief, adapted it into the mix of all the other core beliefs in your life. Dr. Carnes identified 4 primary core beliefs. Now, there are a lot of core beliefs. In fact, I have a table that I made up of about 74, 75 faulty core beliefs. And if you'd like a copy of that through a PDF, look at the information down below and go to my website and request a copy of the core beliefs, and I'll be happy to send a PDF of the core beliefs, and I'll be happy to send it to you. Dr. Carnes is identifying 4 of the basic ones involved in sexual addiction. Core belief number 1 is I'm basically a bad, unworthy person. Now, this wasn't just taken out of the air. This is extensive studies that were done and supported by other studies that seems to identify this theme of a core belief that basically the person feels unworthy, inadequate, unlovable, unwanted. And when you think of sexual addiction, why is it so prevalent, and why is it so difficult to get rid of, to stop, to give it up? First of all, it's enjoyable. Sex is enjoyable. There's a pleasure that comes from it. And in that pleasure, some people have difficulty controlling it, and they need more. And they, in the process of reaching out for more, there's a sense that, oh, I've crossed the line. This is not good. I won't be accepted. I won't be looked well upon. I need to keep it a secret. And so the secret life begins and gets reinforced with each activity, sexual activity that occurs. Even within marriage, there's a point that crosses that line where, as an example, the husband is demanding certain things of the wife, and suddenly she realizes there's a problem here. This isn't right. Something's wrong. And she conveys that to him. And now he's recognizing, oh, I don't see it as wrong, but she does. I better do something to cover this up, to keep this to myself from her, because there's rejection going on, or there's a frown in her face whenever it's mentioned. And so he goes outside the marriage to supply those needs. And unfortunately, each time it reinforces there's something wrong with him. There's inadequacy. He can't stop it. He's abnormal. And so the secret grows. Core belief number 2, no one would love me as I am. Certainly, sexual relations being pleasurable is love. It's an attachment. It's a connection together. And when that happens, it's a good thing. But unfortunately, what occurs is there's problems with that inner feeling, inner belief about self, because it's uncontrollable at that point. So who's going to love me? They say to themselves. Core belief number 3 is my needs are never going to be met if I have to depend on others. If I have to depend on my wife for my core belief, for what I need in sexual relations, and that need has grown to be a monster, then I have to seek other sources. I have to find other ways. And some of those ways are what is quick and easy. And so self-stimulation, pornography often surfaces. Core belief number 4, sex is my most important need. Numero uno, number 1. That's all they think about throughout the day. Sexual thoughts are constantly going through the sex addict's mind. Every event that occurs gets translated into a sexual event. Everywhere they go, they're looking, they're scanning. That's why wives are so upset when they see their husbands staring at another woman at a restaurant or in church. Sexual addiction is everywhere. It's not just in public places or private places. It's in religious places as well. We're going to talk about each of those core beliefs, but the first one, I'm basically a bad and unworthy person, has to do with the interior world of the sex addict, their self-image, how they see themselves, how they feel about themselves. And so significantly, dysfunctional families of origin oftentimes is a starting place for this, because in those dysfunctional families, and let me stipulate, we all come from dysfunctional families, okay? Everybody, there's something wrong with every family. Nobody's perfect, but you got degrees in this continuum. You got mild and you got severe. And as it crosses this middle line towards severe, there's a lot of stress and a lot of difficulties. And how am I going to manage this stress? I need help. So some turn to healthy things for help. Others turn to unhealthy things for help in managing that stress. And unfortunately, if it's unhealthy, it carries over into their adult life and becomes a monster in their life. So we see young people, we see adults who have sexual addictions. Many of them, if not most of them, will say it originated in their youth. Maybe dad watched pornography. Maybe a friend showed them some pornography at school on the computer. Maybe they saw it on TV in a movie. It didn't seem that bad, so it seemed interesting and stimulating, and it progressed. We need to monitor our kids, especially nowadays with the internet. It's important for parents to monitor everything that they're watching. Not in an exaggerated way, but in a way that's reasonable and safe for our children, our young people. So that stress, that discomfort that comes from a severe family of origin needs release. And so they escape to what will help them to feel better. And that escape sometimes is fairly healthy, sports, exercise. If they're smart, they escape to studying and reading. And when parents are yelling, they go to their room and they read their books or do their hobbies or whatever it might be. They escape to what is quick and easy and helps them to release the stress, the pressure. And some turn to sexual things, and before you know it, a sexual behavior becomes out of control. There's a feeling of inadequacy and failure when that occurs. And some people say, and I hear people saying this, well, it's because our society, they're Christian-based and you're not supposed to do that. And so if that restraint was taken out, then, nobody would feel bad about it and everybody would be better off. But unfortunately, or fortunately, you look at other countries where that restraint is not there. Some countries, and please, if I'm wrong, let me know, but some countries like the Netherlands or Switzerland or some of the other countries where there literally is no boundaries on sexual relations, you still have the same problem, the same difficulties, and these same faulty core beliefs that are keeping the secrets and so on. So it's not because we're in a society that views it as inadequate or wrong, as harmful. In this faulty core belief of I'm basically a bad, unworthy person, I'm deserving of humiliation and degradation. I'm deserving of being looked down upon. I'm a bad person. So now I have to struggle around the sexual behavior to justify performing the sexual behavior, but also justify myself. And how do I do that? Well, with that unworthiness, that shame, that guilt, those feelings of rejection, I have to justify keeping the secrets somehow, and in keeping those secrets, my exterior world needs to be defined in a different way, but it also needs to be, I need to be protected from my exterior world. So I'm basically a bad and unworthy person. I have to put a facade, a front. I have to pretend I'm somebody that I'm really not, because I see myself on the inside as bad and unworthy. I see myself in the inside as doing something that is going to elicit frowns on faces, discontent, and rejection and whatever else. And so I put this front of normalcy so that everybody sees. In fact, normalcy is not enough because I feel so bad about myself. I have to overcompensate and make myself better than normal. I have to lift myself up to grandiosity. I have to do things beyond what someone else does, or I have to be the best teacher in the school, or the best pastor in the denomination, or the best whatever it might be, in order to feel better. Because the worse I am, the worse I believe I am, the more I have to compensate in one way or another. And that grandiosity comes up. Now we're talking some narcissism there, aren't we? Entitlement, lack of empathy, a grandiose sense of self. Suddenly, here's these teenage years coming back to haunt me. Because as teenagers, we're all narcissists. We go through that phase of narcissism and we grow out of it as we mature emotionally and intellectually and learn through experiences. Suddenly, though, I'm back there. I'm stuck. Sexual addicts, as well as drug addicts, alcoholics, any kind of unhealthy addiction, all addictions are unhealthy, any kind of addiction, generally they're stuck emotionally and relationally, 13 years old, 14 years old, somewhere in that range where something may have happened that caused them to be stuck, or their inadequate or unhealthy behaviors began around that time and caused them to be stuck there. So this facade that they put in front of them, it has to look good. And so they overcompensate, and because of the immaturity, the emotional immaturity, the intellectual immaturity that comes from that, they can be very smart, but if they're stuck at 13 or 14, there's a limit to how they use their intellect. So they start doing things that others are saying, well, why are you doing that? Why are you making that terrible decision? Why are you handling this problem in such a way that it's going to cause more problems? It's because they're overcompensating based on their emotional, relational IQ. So others view their decisions and actions at some point as abnormal, yet they're trying to make the others see them as better than they really are. That facade is there, creating more lies to protect themselves. And of course, we all know that the more you lie about anything, you're creating this tangled web that you forget your lies. You forget what you just said. You've forgotten that you told somebody this or that, and now you're telling someone who knows someone else something different. And before you know it, you're being exposed as a liar, or as someone who can't tell the truth, or as someone who's a serial liar. And before you know it, you have to compensate for that once again. So you begin to justify why your lies are truths. And as you compensate for that, you're delusional at that point. Now, we might see some politicians like that in today's society. We might see others that way in today's society, and we're scratching our heads thinking, how can they say that? You know, here's the proof. Here's the evidence. And yet they're sticking to their lie. In fact, they're adding to it. They're increasing. It's growing. But that's why. Family and friends, as a result of I'm basically bad and unworthy person and I'm acting that way, family and friends get angry. They get frustrated because of that tangled web of lies. So selfishness, insensitivity, self-centeredness is being seen by family and friends. They're seeing through the facade, and it's upsetting them. It's frustrating them. And they're saying something about it. Why are you doing this? Why are you saying that? Doesn't make sense. Something's behind it all. You have to see through it, not just look at what's being said or what's being done. See through it. What's behind it? What's fueling it? And of course, in counseling, we do that. We look beyond the obvious. What's behind this problem? What's behind what's being said? What's being done? Family and friends get troubled by the self-destructive behavior of the sex addict. It's upsetting when you love someone and you care about someone, and yet they keep doing something that's harming them. And you try to help, but they keep backing themselves up with more lies, supporting themselves with more lies. So this faulty core belief, I'm basically a bad, unworthy person, is that interior of the individual that they may never speak of, but it's a tape playing over and over again in the sex addict's mind. as well as the alcoholic's mind, the drug abuser's mind, and so on. So if you'd like a PDF on the over 70 faulty core beliefs that I've listed, and what disputes that, the words that dispute that, text me or go to our website and request it. I'll be happy to send it to you. No charge. It's free. Because we want you to have peace and harmony in your life. God bless. We'll continue this with the faulty core belief number 2 next time.